Thousands of reservists joined Israel's Gaza force this weekend as soldiers push toward the heart of Gaza City. The military campaign is now in its third week, and despite international calls for ceasefire, neither side is giving up. Chris Mitchell has the story from the border of Israel and Gaza.
Israel hasn't stopped the rockets coming from Gaza, but it has destroyed enough of Hamas's fighting force to slow down the attacks. Hamas fired 24 rockets into Israel Sunday, about half the number it's been able to launch in previous days of fighting. 2 of the rockets hit a kindergarten and a playground, but both were empty. Inside the Gaza Strip, Israel says it killed nearly 50 Hamas members Sunday in the heaviest street fighting of the campaign. Israelis are feeling more isolated diplomatically after a ceasefire vote in the UN Security Council last week, which the U.S. refused to veto. But at Sunday's weekly cabinet meeting, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert defied Israel's critics around the world and suggested Israel will keep fighting to dismantle Hamas. "We have never agreed that anyone should decide in our place if we are allowed to strike at those who bomb our kindergartens and schools," Olmert said, "nor will we ever agree to it." Israel has not yet decided whether to launch the third phase of its attack, a search for Hamas in the densely packed refugee camps and in the center of Gaza City. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, at the Israel-Gaza border.
Thanks, Chris. Terry, it looks like it's happening exactly what I believe the Lord told me at the end of the year, that Israel, when it finally got tough, was going to find the whole international community against it. And here we've got a vote at the United Nations saying ceasefire, and they say we can't do it, and they can't. They can't stop this until they get through with it. Gaza has been a launching ground for 6,000 rockets into Israel, and they're still launching them and bringing in subterranean tunnels to import weapons from Egypt. So.
Well, and there's a history of this kind of attack over and over and over again for such a long time. You kind of marvel that anybody thinks Israel should stop.
Sharon should never have given up Gaza. It was a bad mistake, and now they're paying for it. Well, Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN newsroom. Lee?
Pat, residents of the northern plains are getting ready for another big wallop of winter weather. Blizzard warnings are posted across the region. Arctic air will dip down from Canada and spread snow into Montana, the Dakotas, and Minnesota.
We have lots of cold air in place, lots of warm air coming northward. The clash of those two air masses is what's producing the locally heavy snow. This will fall in the dangerous to life-threatening cold as we get into the middle part of the week.
By the end of the week, the frigid temps will make it down to the Midwest, South, and Northeast. Many in the Midwest are already trying to dig out from under a big snowstorm this weekend. About the only ones happy with the heaps of snow are ski resorts. They call it a stimulus package for their industry. The Bush White House is working with the Obama transition team now to request the second half of the $700 billion bailout money. The plan is to move quickly so the money will be available shortly after Obama takes office. John Jessup has that story now from Washington.
The Senate is already preparing to vote on the request to free up the remaining $350 billion of the bailout fund. That vote could come later this week. Over the weekend, President-elect Barack Obama tried to convince lawmakers to move quickly and to drum up support on a separate $800 billion stimulus plan.
Whether it's retail sales, manufacturing, all the indicators show that we are in the worst recession since the Great Depression. And it's going to take some time to fix it.
The goal is for the money to be available within days of Obama swearing in, but the push to rush is meeting some resistance, and not just from Republicans.
They can't use this money in a way that's simply not effective and that does not assure that there is more credit available.
Obama and top Democrats say the money will be better spent and managed than the first round of the bailout money, and that more of the funds will go directly to relieve struggling homeowners.
And to further drive home his point after last week's unemployment numbers, Obama says Congress needs to work with his incoming administration to bring his economic plan to a vote as soon as possible.
The sooner a recovery and reinvestment package is in place, the sooner we can start turning the economy around. We can't afford 3, 4, 5, 6 more months where we're losing 500,000 jobs per month.
John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Pat, of course, the big question is how long is this going to last? Do you have any thoughts on that?
My thought is that this thing's going to be turning around the first quarter of this year. It's already turning around. The stock market is already turning around, which is sort of a leading indicator. But when all this government money gets poured through the system, it's going to have an impact. The only thing is Paulson decided to look after his buddies on Wall Street, and so most of that initial TARP money went to fatten up the balance sheets of banks. Some banks didn't need it. I heard one banker and some small bank around here saying we're waiting for the TARP money. Well, they didn't need the TARP money, but they got it anyhow. And what the Democrats are saying, and rightly so, is this should help struggling homeowners. And so it was misused. And there are people who are still hurting. But Lee, as I say, I'm encouraged. I think everybody should be hopeful. But certainly by March, the main thrust of this downturn will be over. It's going to be a change. Now, what's going to happen is after that, of course, the dollar is going to become cheaper on the international markets because we're going to flood so many dollars in that we're going to start having inflation instead of deflation, but it's not there yet.